Hello, friends, and welcome into Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Chris Welsh. That is Andrew Erickson. And today, it's wide receiver buy, sell, hold. Yes, the trade deadlines are almost here. We are going to identify some players that you might want to trade for, some you might want to get off of your team, and just kind of be aware of what might be circulating in the market. Trade deadline comes lots of ridiculous trades, lots of crazy ones. Hey, Erickson, did you know that these 5 players that have been on my bench all year would really help your team for your number 1 wide receiver? How does that sound to you? It makes your team better. I'm giving up a lot.
It just makes me angry when I get those trades.
I know.
I just want to almost send them back the trade analyzer tool and what the trade analyzer says about that said trade and how it doesn't benefit me in any way, shape, or form. Be like, I also follow up. Would you recommend someone else take this trade? Would you? If someone else asks you about this trade, would you tell them, hey, make the deal? And when they say no, you're like, well, yeah, I'm going to also not make this trade.
What makes you more mad when you see the 5 bench players that are garbage for 1, or the dissertation about why this is good for you? Not really great for me. Which one? Because I don't like when someone breaks down why it's good, instantly I'm like, nope. Like if I see a breakdown, I'm like, worst trade of all time, if there's anything written whatsoever.
Well, I guess the dissertation to me at least expresses that they are trying to at least show some effort, where it doesn't take a lot of effort to just throw out really bad trade offers just left and right, low balls that you know are never going to get accepted. Maybe this guy just doesn't know what he's doing. He's just not paying attention. He forgot about, he doesn't know X player is injured. So I will give credit to people that do have dissertation. Again, I'm not guilty of, I've sent out low ball trade offers before that maybe I was like, oh, maybe he'll accept it. Or maybe he or she'll accept it. And they usually don't. So I am trying to be better about that. I feel like we all can probably be a little bit better. You know, try to make fair trades. Don't always lowball people, but sometimes there are people that take lowball offers, and those are those are trades you want to make. But I don't hate the dissertation, to be totally honest. I don't do it personally, but I like the effort, at least.
As do I. Hate that. And you know what? I hate it so much. Let's have some fun.
I'm going to send you some trade dissertation today.
And I'm going to save all of them. I'm going to screenshot them, and I'm going to publicly put them out there. Make them good. So make them really good. Make a book out of them. We should make a Fantasy Pros book, the worst trade reasons of all time.
Throw them in the comments. I want to hear some of these. Hey, this is why this trade is good for you. I want to hear
That's 100%. That's the fun I want to have. 2 things in the comments below for this show. The worst reasoning behind a trade, or the best, if you know what I mean. And what's the worst trade offer you've seen this week? It's trade deadline week for most. I know maybe not for every single person. Dynasty might extend it a little bit. So we got a lot to hit. Of course, you guys can check out the running back episode that we did. And we have got wide receivers that we're jumping into. So let's get right into it, Erickson. Buy, sell. Who do you have for your buy wide receiver? That's where we're going to kick it off. Make it good. And sell me on it. Give me your dissertation. Please.
Yeah, I know, because this is a very polarizing player. It's Marvin Harrison Jr. He is going to be my buy among the wide receivers, and kind of how similar to the running back show where we want to get rid of all the Bears. We don't want Bears. I want all the Cardinals. I want every Arizona Cardinal I can possibly get on my roster. Really? They are on a bye week in week 11, and it's because I love their schedule. And I just love what this team is doing. This team is in first place in their division. They just destroyed the New York Jets. They are on a 3-game winning streak. And that's while Kyler Murray's been playing Call of Duty. This team is on a new level right now. And I think that the days of starving Marvin are gone. It's back to Maserati Marvin Harrison Jr. Because you look at the schedule after the bye week at Seattle. Oh my God, I'm losing my train of thought here. At Seattle, at Minnesota, not great, but Seattle again against the Patriots. Fantasy playoffs, Panthers, Rams, 49ers. I think that this is a spot where Marvin Harrison has been so inconsistent and so hard to trust, but he still flashed those points of, hey, this is why this guy was such a highly drafted player. You're starting to see them gel a little bit more with Kyler Murray. And now they have the bye week. What do we talk about all the time? These rookies, after the bye week, they improve. And who's a player that has room to grow in their offense? It's Marvin Harrison Jr. So I think for me, again, buy all Cardinals, whether it's James Conner, Trey Benson, Trey McBride, Trey Bebe, and any of these Treys, and Marvin Harrison Jr. I want to buy the Cardinals, so give me Marvin Harrison Jr.
You were getting hyped up. You were like, Marvin Harrison, limousine riding, jet flying, deep ball catching, son of a gun. Woo! Marvin Harrison. I mean, he doesn't know how to separate, but that's fine. Just zone defenses, just kind of sit there and catch. it
He
looks
can
like
separate
things
against
are
the
turning.
Rams.
Yeah,
Separate
well,
against the Rams.
pretty easy to separate against the Rams. I mean, Jaylen Waddle did it for one
One
play at
drive.
least, or two play, one drive. He did it really well. But Marvin Harrison, he can do that. Ultimately, my only problem is like they haven't hit him with like a mass amount of targets, and like he's creating a great floor because the floor has been pretty bottom. But you know what? Like to your point, they're on bye. They can kind of work through a few things. The offense seems to be clicking a little bit more. There's more of a connection with Kyler Murray. We're seeing big plays. That offense is clicking in general, and there's a favorable schedule. I think this is pretty slick because there's not a lot of positive feelings that have been surrounded on Marvin Harrison. We'll call him the nature boy now. He's our nature boy, Marvin Harrison. Woo! Do you get the reference?
No, not a clue. Woo! Over my head. There it goes.
So disappointed. I mean, yeah, Erickson, you are a beloved character on Fantasy Pros. That might be the worst. That one's gonna hurt. That one's gonna hurt you a little bit. I'm just telling you. You not knowing that reference, that's gonna sting and hurt you a little bit. We'll recover next week. I love the Marvin Harrison one. I love the bye week. That's something that you and I have been kind of tiptoeing around, especially with like the trade deadline. There's a panic. People, teams. It's like I'm hovering around, or I got to get a little bit higher. The panic mode of what people need to do this week really does benefit some trades, specifically those guys that are like on a bye. So I like this Marvin Harrison one a lot. Where do you have Marvin Harrison rest of season? Do you think he's a top 15 wide receiver? Is that too dramatic?
No, I got him right in that fringe, wide receiver 17. So he's right in that ballpark, because I just think that you're trying to buy the ascension of Marvin Harrison Jr. Been up and down, inconsistent, but that's the reason why people can trade him, because people are afraid that, I'm just going to get more of these down games. And look, he's had a couple tough matchups against the Jets and Chargers, and he's shown up in those games, and he's had decent outings. So I think the target's going to come. I think gel with Kyler Murray, a couple late night Call of Duty sessions with Marvin Harrison Jr., Kyler Murray, chemistry's coming.
Shout out to Call of Duty, by the way. Shout out to the games I've been playing. One more time, though. Woo! Nothing?
No.
Nature boy?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Well, you guys, you know what to do in the comments. Sorry. All right. I'm going to homer out. It's going to feel like a homer, by the way. But my wide receiver to buy is Jauan Jennings. Though I do feel like one thing. Some Niner things can get right and wrong. I feel like I have been on the Jauan Jennings, the path, the ethos of Jauan Jennings throughout the season when it's been important. And, one of the biggest things that happened early on was when he filled in for Brandon Ayuk, when we saw him getting mass amounts of targets. He had this big explosive week. Things have kind of centered out. He's been hurt a little bit. But this week, he got to play the X receiver spot, finally, for the first time. And what did that amount to? 11 targets, 7 catches, 93 yards. We've also already seen throughout the season, he has shown points of being an elite separator. He has been the elite middle of the field wide receiver. They don't put Debo in that situation anymore. They haven't put Ricky Pearsall in there, which we'll talk about him, I think, a little bit later. You see Kittle in there, but he has taken over that Brandon Ayuk role. And one of the biggest awesome things that we saw early on in the season when he had filled in for Ayuk was that first read percentage, because Debo can dominate that. Well, in week 10, in that X spot, 38% first read percentage. It's elite. It's huge for one of the top passing teams in the NFL. Yes, Christian McCaffrey is back. They used him even more in the receiving game. Their offense has been inefficient enough that they are playing these super close games or playing from behind. They love to give leads away in the third and fourth quarter, which is going to lead to them throwing the ball more. What I love about Jauan Jennings, and I'm going to go back to what I said when Brandon Ayuk got hurt, Debo Samuel, the opportunity to be a wide receiver one. I think Jauan Jennings can literally take over for what Brandon Ayuk's value was. I said he's a wide receiver too, and that's how we were kind of valuing Brandon Ayuk at that time. And then Ricky Pearsall floats between maybe not flex to flex wide receiver /3, somewhere in that territory. And I think the only thing that's not right now is Debo Samuel playing at a wide receiver one level. Jauan Jennings is going to see targets. He is the deep play option. Even if he gets 4 or 5 catches in a game, it's going to amount to something worthwhile. I think his low window is a wide receiver 3. His high is in a good wide receiver 2 range. And I'm just not sure he costs anything to some dramatic value. I think he belongs closer to Darnell Mooney, and I don't think people look at him in the Darnell Mooney value range. So that first read percentage, what he can do as a separator, where he gets the ball deep, and this offense passing pretty heavily. I think Jauan Jennings is a really great, not just depth positional buy right now, but someone you can put in, hopefully buying at wide receiver 3 value. And I think from shout out to our boy Joe Pisapia, from an RPV perspective, someone overvalued at wide receiver 3. But what say you? I'm the 49er fan, so I can get a little bit homer on that side sometimes. But what say you, Erickson? What do you think about Jauan Jennings?
Well, you are the Jauan Jennings oracle. You've been on the pulse of this player all season long about when to buy him, when to add him off of waivers, and when to have confidence about. I bet you were above consensus on where he was in ECR last week.
Oh yeah.
I think it came down to just he's a player where the name brand is almost holding him back from, well, just look at the numbers. Like, look at his production this year. He's been super productive. He's had monster games, whether there are guys have been missing or not, but he has a full-time role in this offense. And it's funny because we were drafting so many of these Bears wide receivers. 3 Bears receivers attached to a rookie quarterback. Oh, this will be fine. This will work out. But would you rather have, you'd rather have any 49ers receiver over any Bears receiver?
Yeah, I love that question.
Right? So, because you have, again, it's crowded and you obviously have a tight end in the fold as well, but the highs between when it's a Jennings week, when he does get the targets, he's going to be having a monster game with a touchdown, with 100 receiving yards. Even last week, again, none of the 49ers receivers found the end zone, in the red zone specifically, but he was still a focal point in the red zone. And he's been Brock Purdy's guy all year long when he's had opportunities to play, dating back to the Super Bowl. So I think that going after Jennings is a really sharp play. I think that you just kind of have to hold your nose and not look at the name that you're trading away to get Jauan Jennings, because when you mentioned Darnell Mooney, I think that was a really interesting comparison because I have them, the gap in their ranking and rest of season, very large. But when you just look at the numbers, especially on a points or a receiving yards per game basis, I bet they're really not that far off between the two players, but the value in the market is going to say, well, no, Jennings is worth way less, when there is a whole conglomerate of receivers that are ranked ahead of Jennings that you can just trade to get Jauan Jennings because, he's a waiver wire guy. He's the number 3 receiver on his team, which, like you point out, isn't really the case in reality.
100%. And you guys can take it to the test, see what it would take to get Jauan Jennings in your league by using the trade analyzer on My Playbook. Go and download the My Playbook app today. Go to fantasypros.com/myplaybook, and you can get access by syncing your league. You can just go and easily sync your league, and then you can use the trade analyzer to tell you what trades make sense. You can also, instead of the dissertation of, by the way, you can use what Trade Analyzer says trade work as your reasoning behind the trade, instead of trying to come up with some cockamamie type of reason of why these 7 players for your 1 make sense. Please don't do that in general, but why you can make that trade for Jauan Jennings or any of these other guys that we're going to end up talking about. Use a Trade Analyzer today. Make your trades easier, better, and with better justification. Check out My Playbook over on Fantasy Pros. Download the app. Just easily sync your league. Get it going today. All right, let's talk about wide receivers we are moving off of. We bought Marvin Harrison Jr. We bought Jauan Jennings. Who are we selling, Mr. Andrew Erickson?
Well, we have a theme with our wide receivers to sell this week. Wide receivers that no longer have their starting quarterbacks. And that's the case here with CeeDee Lamb. I kind of entertained the idea of buying Lamb last week, talking about, hey, the splits with Cooper Rush really weren't that bad back in 2022. But I just think that Dallas right now is just spiraling right now. I don't think there's a light at the end of the tunnel for this team. We just got news earlier today on Tuesday that Dak Prescott is going to go season-ending hamstring surgery. So he is done. He is not coming back. And yes, Lamb was good with Cooper Rush at a time in 2022. We can't confirm that Cooper Rush is going to continue to be the quarterback because they have an incentive to, why don't we just see what we have in Trey Lance? And that could be when the wheels really fall off of the Dallas Cowboys offense. If you have Trey Lance back there and he's just running around, this offense has been dysfunctional all season. That was with Dak Prescott as the quarterback. So as hot as Lamb ran last year out of the bye week, it's just the total opposite for him this season. It just hasn't been his year. Last week, he had 12, 13 targets and still finished outside the top 50 receivers. Now, I know he dropped the touchdown, and I kind of wish he caught the touchdown because I think you maybe get a little bit more for him in a trade if he had just scored. But the vibes around this team are just so bad. And I get that the schedule for the Dallas Cowboys is pretty good in the playoffs. You have the Bengals, Panthers, Buccaneers, and Eagles. but without Dak Prescott, Lamb is just a volume-based wide receiver. And I feel like you can get volume-based wide receivers for him that have more upside in the offenses that they play in. So as good as a player is as Lamb, I just don't want to attach myself to Lamb in my fantasy football playoffs matchups where he has Cooper Rush as his quarterback or Trey Lance. And that's who I'm going to face the best team in my league with Lamb, and he doesn't even have his main quarterback. So I feel like his upside is going to be capped potentially. And at this point, well, he's a expendable wide receiver that still has the name brand, where I think you still get maybe a little bit more than you should based on what his actual production will be rest of season. So I thought about this one for a lot. And again, this kind of goes against my process where you're selling low. But given that we're approaching these trade deadlines, I don't want to go into my fantasy postseason with Lamb as an integral part where you have to, because if you have him, you're starting him. You're not going to keep him on your bench. So for me, CeeDee Lamb is going to be my wide receiver sell.
Okay, let me ask you some who's higher, and then I've got a trade offer for you. It's going to really help your team, by the way. It's really going to help your team. Who would you rather have rest of season, CeeDee Lamb or Nico Collins?
Oh, Nico Collins, easy. That one's easy.
That was an easy one.
That's
all right.
Easy, yeah.
DK Metcalf or CeeDee Lamb?
Metcalf.
Terry McLaurin or CeeDee Lamb?
Terry.
Oh, all right,
you're giving. I mean, I don't think these are close. So I feel great about all these trades.
Okay,
so.
Then let's put Drake London or CeeDee Lamb.
London.
Oh my God, how low can we go? All right, let me give you this trade offer.
Well, I mean, if these can get it done, then I'm trading Lamb. Bye.
I already know this trade offer is going to be a smash. You give me Lamb, and I give you George Pickens and Tyrone Tracy.
Oh man, I'm breaking my phone to accept.
I know you're breaking your phone, but if we think it is still CeeDee Lamb, top 5 wide receiver in theory in a lot of people's brains, Tyrone Tracy, not seen as a top 15 RB. Pickens might make it difficult. I don't think that's an outlandish move that you could ask if you had Lamb to go get, and that person would have to have Tracy and Pickens, but like, I think that's a general space of where you could do it. If I downgraded it to Tyrone Tracy and Josh Downs, are you moving off of Lamb for that?
I think so. Yeah. I think that's kind of where I'm reaching. I'm not smashing my phone. I look at that deal and think, hey, look, I get it's CeeDee Lamb, but he's just a volume receiver at this point. And what is Josh Downs? A volume receiver. And then what do you get? What's the difference? Oh, well, you also get Tyrone Tracy thrown into the mix. So that would be enough, the 2-for-1, to kind of push me over the top. So yeah, maybe I'm being too low on Lamb, but the deals that you're giving me, I feel great about taking. I mean, I would take Pickens for Lamb straight up. Pickens is averaging almost 100 receiving yards per game with Russ as his quarterback. And he's facing the Ravens this week. I mean, if you can flip Lamb for Pickens straight up, I'm doing that 9 times out of 10.
I think you could probably get a little bit more just for everybody out there if you're moving off of Lamb, but there you go. That's a big sell. Mine's not as big, though. It has been a very popular name on this show throughout the season. My sell is moving off of Brian Thomas. Oh my gosh, did I love Brian Thomas in the year? You know what I don't love? Brian Thomas with Mac Jones, because that's what it looks like we are heading to. This week with Mac Jones, I gotta be honest with you, because I wasn't paying attention to this game a whole ton. I was like, did Brian Thomas just get scratched from the game and I didn't hear about it? No, he just didn't get a catch until the 4th quarter with Mac Jones. Mac Jones does not look good in this offense. 12% first read percentage was given to Brian Thomas because Mac Jones doesn't know what he's doing out there. It's just going to go to safety net running backs and tight ends, stuff down the middle. The thing that makes Brian Thomas great is being able to stretch the field and make these big plays. I think those are gone. Also, to throw on top of it, pinpointing this where we can, strength of schedule, rest of season, strength of schedule, you can check over on FantasyPros. For wide receivers, the worst of all wide receivers, rest of season for Brian Thomas. So you give me Mac Jones as his quarterback with the worst strength of schedule, and Mac Jones this isn't, if it was like Jameis Winston, hey, Jameis Winston's just going to throw the ball 70 yards and Brian Thomas is going to have a play or two. I don't feel comfortable with that with Mac Jones. Mac had like a first good drive and then it just became what we knew for that to be. And it does not look like we're getting Trevor Lawrence back. So I think things are trending in a really bad direction just overall for the Jaguars. We're kind of getting a few teams here where we talked about in the RB trade show about like, hey, Dolphins might want to move off. Hey, Bears might want to move off. Jags are in this same territory. Maybe if it's for dirt, nothing. And here's the problem with Brian Thomas. What can you ultimately get since it's been quiet here for a tiny bit? Yeah, that might be the point. But the stronger side of me selling here is I don't really want Brian Thomas on my team rest of season. We had talked about this on the Monday Out of Bounds podcast, DeAndre Hopkins versus Brian Thomas. Bogman didn't want to give up on Brian Thomas. Joe and I, easy DeAndre Hopkins rest of season. And I think that continues to get pushed even further. Let me ask you this. Who would you rather have rest of season, Brian Thomas or Jauan Jennings?
Oh, man. Got it. Of course, you're going to put me on the spot as the
You can
the
say Brian Thomas if that's your guy.
But he is my guy, but he's not the right answer.
He's not the right answer, I don't think.
That's why this one I struggle with so much. And I'm glad you put him on the sheet because I wouldn't have it in me to put Brian Thomas Jr. as a sell because I've been scooping him up everywhere. And again, I was talking about this when I did my Reddit AMA later last week, excuse me. And somebody asked me about, what do you think about Brian Thomas Jr. with Mac Jones? And I said, well, every blurb next year is going to be, well, before Mac Jones took over, Brian Thomas Jr. was X. was so great at wide receiver and playing wide receiver.
I'm going to love him next year.
Yeah.
I love him in Dynasty. Great Dynasty buy Brian Thomas right now. Dynasty.
Yeah, I think that's the case here. And again, I probably have to move him down to my rest of season rankings just because I'm holding on because I'm just such a buyer of the talent, but the situation really looks like it's going to be tough for him to overcome. And he's also dealing with his own injury as well, right? He had a chest injury. Again, sometimes it's weird when we get reports that say this guy's going to be out 2 to 4 weeks and then he suddenly is playing. Well, is he playing at 100%? Similar to what happened with Michael Pittman. Oh, this back injury, he's going to be put on IR and then he's playing. And then you look up at his box score and it's terrible because clearly the guy isn't at 100%. I can't confirm whether Thomas is playing hurt or not, but just, you laid out the perfect case of why Brian Thomas Jr. is not a player you want to be holding rest of the season. And I really have nothing else to argue except, well, he's a really good player, but we've seen that the last couple of weeks and it really hasn't mattered.
Yeah, I mean, and you do have to look at it from the lens of like, all right, if you're like, okay, guys, I got to sell off him. What can I get? Yeah, if you could only get Keenan Allen for him, I would go down with that ship. And it's also kind of dependent on like what your wide receiver core look like. I can stomach Brian Thomas for the rest of the season if I'm not starting him and I'm waiting to see if things bounce back. If he's a wide receiver 3 in my lineup every single week, I don't know. You might want to see if you can consolidate. You might want to buy low where you can in any other area because I just don't think it's going to look good, or maybe you're going to have some twofer trades in there. So it's a tough one in general for Brian Thomas.
I do want to add one point when it comes to selling these kind of depreciated assets. I think that it's a much better way to trade negotiate if you package them because when they're the focal point of the deal, all you think about is the negativity that, oh, Lamb's quarterback's so bad. Oh, Brian Thomas is hurt and he's got Mac Jones. That's all you think about. Whereas it's much easier for you to move that player when there's an actual piece of that deal that has positive vibes attached to it. And then the conversation becomes, well, when you send that trade offer, the other manager kind of looks back and thinks, okay, well, I really like this piece. The Lamb, Brian Thomas, I'm not so sure about. But then they start to convince themselves, well, maybe it won't be that bad because I want that other player too. So I think that's really the best way to approach when you're quote unquote selling low is package that player, make it kind of the sweetener of the deal. Don't make it the focal point necessarily selling a J.K. Dobbins plus one of these receivers to really upgrade at running back or upgrade at wide receiver. I think that's probably your best bet versus, well, this guy's just been all negativity. I'm going to try to trade him straight up. That's probably not going to work. So really think about packaging these players with players that maybe have a little bit more optimism around them to really upgrade overall.
Yeah, I want to add, I think that might be the most astute thing we've talked about on this show. We also did the RB trade show across the board, even more than just the players, is that, these depreciating guys, their singular value, I don't think it's like even 50% of what you can do when packaging and trading a Brian CeeDee Lamb's a little bit different. Like I think you can singularly trade him and you could maybe get like a Tracy in another piece. But a guy like Brian Thomas, there really isn't any great inherent value in trading him just alone because it's going to look gross. It's going to look dumb. But if you can package to where something else somebody wants, and then you're moving Brian Thomas, you can almost upgrade his value as part of it. That's probably a really, really good approach to this. We've got some buy, sell, hold debates that we're going to talk about, but it is special offer time first because we've got a special offer for all of you. You can unlock a month of Betting Pros Premium for free. That's right. The rest of November into December, Prime Football, you can have premium access to Betting Pros. Download the Betting Pros app today and use promo code FPFREE. Get access to tools like the same game parlay tool, the prop bet analyzer, and the prize pick prop bet cheat sheet. FPFREE is the code. Premium access to the tools. You can do your own analysis. You can check out the best bets, check out the feed. You can even follow Erickson and I on Betting Pros at Andrew and at Welsh. Don't miss out. Try it for free for 1 month, now available on iOS and Android. Promo code FPFREE. Wide receiver debates. I've got, I think these are some good ones here. Are you ready for Tank Dell, Jaylen Waddle, DJ Moore? Buy, sell, hold these 3 wide receivers.
Selling DJ Moore. I don't want any Bears anywhere near my fantasy team.
Big
rest
old
of season. Even though they're going to have an uptick after the Shane Waldron firing, it's not going to last. So I'm not going to be fooled by 1 week of boosted production. So I'm going to sell DJ Moore. Jaylen Waddle and Tank Dell is interesting. I think that Waddle for me is still going to just be a hold, just in case we see this Tyreek Hill thing not really pan out. If he's more of a decoy, do you see Waddle continue to get more and more involved in the passing game? Again, just disappointing game from him after the first drive, but I think the talent's still there. He's got a couple good matchups coming up, so I'll just hold Waddle, and you can't trade him for, unless you're trading it to me or Welsh, you're not going to get much of anything for Jaylen Waddle, so hold him. And then Tank Dell's the buy. And this one's weird for me because you think, well, Nico Collins is coming back. Why would you buy Tank Dell? Well, in the back of my mind, it's still this Tank Dell overcoming this leg injury from last year, where I still don't think maybe he's at 100%, but the week that things kind of start to click for him, I know last year with Tony Pollard, it took about halfway through the season before he said he felt back to where he was after that broken leg injury. And maybe we still haven't seen the best from Tank Dell. I don't feel dumb betting on the Houston Texans offense turning things around potentially with CJ Stroud as the quarterback. And maybe you see things, hey, Nico Collins is back in the lineup. This opens things up a little bit more for Tank Dell. Again, Stephon Diggs is never coming back because he's on injured reserve. So I will hold a light up for Tank Dell. And I think coming off a bad game, this is usually when you want to buy receivers that we know have upside. Tank Dell showed as a rookie he has upside this year. He's shown upside. So I would be a buyer of Tank Dell.
Yeah, sometimes there's wide receivers or running backs, whoever, that are good when everybody else has gone around them. And sometimes there are guys that become better when those better pieces are alive and out there and taking different coverages. And that's something I think that Tank Dell is. I was curious if you were going to be able to contain yourself. I almost can't contain myself in wanting to say, I kind of want to buy Jaylen Waddle because you did see the success of the Dolphins offense in that Monday night game was centered around when Jaylen Waddle was getting the ball. But then they tried to start forcing it, and then they moved away. It was once the scripted drive went away. And by the way, I just want to point out, what is that first drive usually? The scripted drive. What did they do on the scripted drive? Went to Jaylen Waddle almost exclusively. So I think that's a positive. But then when they were just, they were just winging it and going, it was just a disaster, bad running plays, just bad decision making. So I kind of want to say Waddle's on the uptick, but we'll hold. I think Tank Dell is a better buy right now. His value is probably at the same level of Waddle, and I think he has more upside when Nico gets back and they can have more efficiency in the passing game. DJ Moore is a hard sell, and guess what? Maybe it'll bounce back. Maybe, with Waldron gone, maybe they're going to just do the thing, nothing but DJ Moore, and they try to force feed him targets and stuff like that. I don't know that that's the case. I think it seems like there's a better connection with Odunze and Caleb Williams. I feel like he might be a beneficiary. I don't feel good about DJ Moore anymore in that offense. And I don't think firing the offensive coordinator is going to fix it. So I'm out on him. So I'm going to co-sign this one. Let's go to the second one on the list here. This is a little bit deeper, and there's a little bit of a waiver slant to this. So buy, sell, hold, Ricky Pearsall, Xavier Worthy, Marquez, Valdes-Scantling. Two of those guys, Pearsall and MVS, probably going to be the tippy top of waivers this week. Throwing in Xavier Worthy, who we know has big play potential, but has been a disappointment. Who are you buying, who are you selling, and who are you holding?
I'm going to buy Ricky Pearsall because I just want pieces of the 49ers offense, and I don't care how I get them. I think that just having guys on this offense is a smart move to make. So I'm going to buy the rookie first-round pick. I can't believe you put Xavier Worthy and MVS here together. I can't believe you're making me compare these two players.
So excited for what your answer is about to be.
I'm holding Xavier Worthy, of course. I'm going to hold Xavier Worthy. I'm going to sell Marquez Valdes-Scantling, even though I think as Fugazi as his performance was last week, because he had it all in the second quarter and then he did nothing the rest of the 3 quarters of the game. I will say, for those that pick up MVS and are probably going to be ridiculed because, oh my God, we've seen this with MVS. Like, he couldn't do it with Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers. He's playing the Browns this week, and there is no defense that blows more coverages downfield than the Cleveland Browns. So if you have the ability to flex MVS this week, I think it's going to pay off. Rest of season, I don't think it's going to work, but if you pick up MVS and you start him, kudos to you, because I think he's going to have another big catch, big play against the Cleveland Browns. But rest of season, I'm still going to roll with Xavier Worthy. He's shown enough upside this year, even though it's been bad the last couple of weeks, that I'm not going to just totally give up on him, especially if it's for MVS.
Has he? Has he been showing enough?
Start of the year, yeah.
You know what he looks like? Flashes. You know what Xavier Worthy looks like?
Don't say it.
He looks like Walgreens MVS. That's what he looks like.
I thought you were going to say Marvin Mims from last year.
Yeah. There you go. Another variant of it. He's into the variant group. Xavier Worthy looks like Marquez Valdes-Scantling. By the way, doing about the same thing that MVS did in the Chiefs offense as well. So listen, if you want to talk about upside, it's Worthy. But we've gone 10 weeks and Worthy is just not established. They had to go and get another wide receiver. I think there's enough of a scenario. I'm not trying to advocate for MVS because like I got in a big argument with Bogman about this where it's like, I want Pearsall heavily over MVS. MVS is probably going to be the biggest disappointment, but here's the only thing. There's no one else there. Olave's going to be gone. Shahid's gone. Tipton is nothing. They don't have anybody except Valdes-Scantling. So would I rather the number one on the Saints who can get 2 targets a game, or Xavier Worthy, the number 4 or 5 wide receiver on the Chiefs, to get 2 targets? I know where you could go with this. I'll actually hold MVS, buy Ricky Pearsall. He's the biggest buy. He's the flex. He's the only guy here that's probably going to be more consistently a wide receiver 3. I'm just going to kind of sell off of Xavier Worthy because I don't think that's a player I want on my team. I can comfortably sit MVS. I don't want to talk myself into putting Xavier Worthy in a lineup because he's only going to disappoint. Maybe that'll change. Xavier Worthy's probably the most talented of this list. But I'll take the real MVS and not the variant of MVS known as Xavier Worthy.
So if you had, okay, I'm in this scenario in a bunch of leagues. I got Xavier Worthy on the bench. So this week in waivers, you would drop Xavier Worthy.
Think so?
Pick up MVS.
I think I would. Just MVS is like a disaster. I completely agree. But he's the number one on the disastrous Saints. He might get 0 catches this coming week. Very possible. How much worse is that going to be than what Xavier Worthy does with the Chiefs? How much? 1 catch?
I mean, look, I am much more open to this than I ever thought that I would be coming into this conversation.
I don't want to do
this. When I saw MVS on the show sheet, I'm like, well, this is an easy player to sell.
Do you think I want to pick up Marquez Valdes-Scantling? Do you think I want to make a case for Marquez Valdes-Scantling? I don't want any of that to exist. But all I know is Tipton was like the number 1 in snaps. He didn't have a single catch this past week. They didn't want to get him involved in it. They're not going to get a bunch of wide receivers involved. Marquez Valdes-Scantling is a guy that's going to stretch the field, and Carr seems to like him a little bit, just a tiny, itsy bit. Don't want to start any of them. Ricky Pearsall's the real winner here. It's a gross conversation. And I hate myself just a little bit more for even being, involved with MVS. But,
well,
Erickson.
I mean, the one thing is, if he's in that Rashid Shaheed role, like, that's the thing where you think about it, like, well, if he's in that Rashid Shaheed role, and I just can't for some reason get this matchup against the Browns out of my head.
Who scores more points this coming week?
See, that's the thing now, because I could definitely see MVS being the guy that outscores him, and then you're going to just be victory lapping over my grave and me holding Xavier.
I promise you, I will not ever victory lap an MVS take. I don't want to be held my feet under the fire, and I will not victory.
So we're not ladder betting MVS when his prop opens up at 30.5 receiving.
If it opens up at 24.5, we are ladder betting it to 50. We're doing longest. We are going to ladder bet it. Yeah. So
we're clearly very confident.
Yeah, we're going to go 25, 30, 40, 50. That's what the ladder bet looks like. So you guys can check that over on Betting Pros. Go and sign up. You'll get Erickson and I with Pisa Pia on Friday. But there's a lot more. There's a lot more. If you guys have got more questions on the buy, sell, and trade, we got you covered with our weekly trade live stream right here on the YouTube channel. Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern. And those are listening on the podcast, just shoot on over youtube.com/fantasypros. Make sure you subscribe, get the notifications so you don't miss any of it. That is it. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. You guys know what to do in the comments below. For Andrew Erickson, I'm Chris Welsh. We'll talk to you next time right here on Fantasy Pros.